Picture a forest clearing, somewhere in the wooded country near Hastinapura. A young man stands alone, barefooted on the earth, a bow in his hand. Beside him, fashioned from river clay, is a human figure, a rough likeness of a teacher who refused him. He shoots, he corrects, he shoots again. There is no applause, no correction, no fellow student to measure himself against. Only the clay face, the silence of the trees, and the arrow finding its mark with a precision that one day will astonish the greatest warriors of the age. This is where the story of Droṇācārya's blind spot begins. Not on a battlefield, not in a throne room, but here, in a clearing, with a boy practicing before an idol of the man who turned him away. The Ekalavya episode falls in the Adi Parva, chapter 134, in Kesari Mohan Ganguly's numbering of the Mahābhārata. Vaishampayana, the narrator, tells us plainly what Drona was thinking when the young Niṣāda prince Ekalavya first came to him asking to be taught archery. The Ganguly rendering reads, Drona, cognizant of all rules of morality, accepted not the prince as his pupil in archery, seeing that he was a Niṣāda who might in time excel all his high-born pupils. Notice the phrase the translator reaches for, cognizant of all rules of morality. The text does not present Drona as ignorant or careless. It presents him as a man who knows Dharma, and who still refuses. That gap between knowing and doing is precisely what the epic is examining. The Sanskrit concept the tradition uses for what Drona is exhibiting here is pakshapata, IAST, pakshapata, which means partiality, favoritism, literally the act of falling to one side. It is a structural tilt, not a momentary lapse. Pakshapata had been building in Drona long before Ekalavya arrived at his door. To understand it, we have to go back a few chapters earlier in the same Adi Parva, to the moment Drona first accepted his position as royal preceptor of the Kuru princes. He gathered the young men around him and asked them to make a promise, that once they became skilled with weapons, they would accomplish a certain purpose of his, the humiliation of his old enemy Drupada, the king of Panchala, who had insulted him in poverty. The princes hesitated, and then Arjuna stepped forward alone and vowed to fulfill whatever his teacher asked, no matter what it was. Drona wept with happiness. From that moment, the text tells us, Arjuna became Drona's favorite. The Pakshapata did not merely emerge, it was formalized, sealed by mutual vow on the very first day. Drona reinforced that vow privately, when he observed Arjuna practicing archery in complete darkness, inspired by his brother Bhima's nocturnal eating, trusting his hands when his eyes were useless. Drona was moved. He promised Arjuna that he would become the foremost wielder of weapons in the world. This is the private vow that will, much later, drive the crisis with Ekalavya. A promise made from love, made in the dark, is still a promise. And promises, the Mahābhārata never lets us forget, have weight. So when Ekalavya's brilliance is accidentally discovered, the Kuru princes are hunting in that same forest. Their dog runs ahead and returns with 7 arrows, filling its open mouth before it could shut it. Placed by an archer of such speed and precision that the princes stand in silence, shamed. The question is not really about Ekalavya. The question is about what Drona built. Arjuna goes to Drona privately. The text gives us the exact words in Ganguly's rendering. Thou hadst lovingly told me, clasping me to thy bosom, that no pupil of thine should be equal to me. Why then is there a pupil of thine, the mighty son of the Niṣāda king, superior to me? Arjuna is not wrong to feel the contradiction. He is holding Drona accountable to a promise Drona himself made. But notice what that complaint does. It forces Drona into what the tradition calls a Dharma Sankata, IAST, Dharma Sankata, a constriction of Dharma, a moral crisis with no clean exit. On one side, his promise to Arjuna. On the other, the undeniable fact that Ekalavya has been training under the discipline of the guru-shishya bond, albeit before a clay image, without Drona's explicit sanction. Drona is caught between two obligations, and the text says he reflected for a moment, before choosing his resolution. The resolution is devastating. He travels with Arjuna to find Ekalavya in the forest. The young man prostrates before the teacher, overcome with joy at being seen at last. And Drona speaks what is perhaps the most morally complex sentence he ever utters. Adi Parva, chapter 134. If, O hero, thou art really my pupil, give me then my fees. Ekalavya, radiant with devotion, asks what Drona desires, and Drona answers, O Ekalavya, if thou art really intent on making me a gift, I should like then to have the thumb of thy right hand. The institution of guru-dakṣiṇā, IAST, guru-dakṣiṇā, is sacred. It is the gift a student offers the teacher at the completion of training, not as payment in a commercial sense, but as spiritual acknowledgement, a way of recognizing what the guru has transmitted. In Drona's hands, in this moment, the institution is inverted. He first denied the relationship, then retroactively claimed it in order to weaponize its obligations. The word the epic's own interpretive tradition reaches for, from the Sanskrit of that passage, is dharuna, terrible, cruel, harsh. The text does not exonerate Drona. It lets the words sit there. Ekalavya, with tears in his eyes, does not hesitate. He severs the thumb from his right hand and places it before the clay figure of his teacher. Here the epic forces two things into the same frame without resolving the tension between them: the beauty of Ekalavya's devotion and the horror of what it has been made to serve. The guru-shishya bond at its most absolute, exploited by the very person who embodies its authority. Consider what this moment looks like from the inside of a life much smaller in scale than any epic. A parent who always wanted a particular kind of child, academically distinguished, professionally successful in the way they imagined, watches one child struggling, uncertain, trying to find their own form of excellence, and quietly redirects every resource, every conversation, every gesture of praise toward the child who fits the picture. Not from cruelty, from love that has already decided what it loves. The struggling child is not refused openly. They are simply not seen as a candidate for the full inheritance. This is pakshapata lived at kitchen table scale. The text would recognize it. Now the karma of Drona's favoritism begins to propagate. The students he used to humiliate Drupada provoke Drupada into performing a sacrificial yajna with the specific intention of begetting a son who will kill Drona. From that fire come Dhṛṣṭadyumna and Draupadi. Dhṛṣṭadyumna arrives in the world, carrying in the tradition's language the ordained purpose of his birth: to destroy the man his father hates. And then the Mahābhārata gives us what may be the most quietly startling detail in Drona's entire biography. After some time, Drona hears about Dhṛṣṭadyumna, and he invites him to his gurukula. Even though Drona knows the prophecy that this boy is destined to slay him, he happily accepts him as a student and teaches him advanced military arts. The person Drona refused to teach because Ekalavya might surpass his students is now free from consideration. The person born to kill him is welcomed. The blind spot has a specific shape. It sees rivals for Arjuna's supremacy, not threats to its own life. The second blind spot is moha, IAST, moha, delusion arising from attachment. The Bhagavad Gita, which falls inside the Mahābhārata's frame, describes moha as the fog that descends when smriti, clear memory of what is real, collapses. For Drona, the object of moha is his son Aśvatthāmā. He fights for the Kauravas in the Kurukṣetra war, not because he believes in their cause. The text tells us he condemned Duryodhana's treatment of the Pandavas, but because his obligation to Hastinapura, the power that rescued him from poverty, and his attachment to his son's security keep him bound. Krishna understands this precisely. He sees that Drona's love for Aśvatthāmā is not simply affection. It is putra-moha, IAST, putra-moha, paternal delusion, the specific form of moha that causes a father to lose the thread of Dharma entirely. The plan is simple and brutal. Bhima kills an elephant that happens to share the name Aśvatthāmā. Drona hears the claim of his son's death and cannot hold his formation. He asks the one person whose truthfulness he trusts above all others. Yudhishthira's reply is recorded in the Drona Parva. The phrase runs, Aśvatthāmā hata iti, naro va kunjaro va. Aśvatthāmā is slaying whether a man or an elephant. The second half of the sentence disappears under the sound of conch shells and drums, the battlefield roar arranged precisely to swallow it. Drona hears only the half that destroys him. He lays down his weapons, and Dhṛṣṭadyumna, the student he trained with open arms, completes what his birth promised. A man in his late 40s, watching his father lose his name to memory's slow dissolution, knows something about this kind of collapse. There are days when a son, who has held himself steady for months, hears a single wrong thing, a phone call at 2 in the morning, a doctor's flat voice describing a scan, and suddenly all his careful management of the situation dissolves, and he is not a capable adult anymore. He is just a frightened child who loves his father. The grief was always under the competence. Drona's moha was not a character defect planted late in life. It was there from the beginning, from the penance he performed, asking that his son be as valiant as Shiva. The love itself was the vulnerability. The battlefield only provided the precise syllable that found it. What to carry forward into your actual day. The Mahābhārata is not indicting love, or loyalty, or devotion to a student. It is asking what those beautiful things become when they are not examined. Pakshapata, partiality, does not announce itself as favoritism. It arrives dressed in legitimate feeling, a promise kept, a bond honored, a parent protecting a child. Moha, delusion, does not feel like confusion from inside. It feels like love, absolute and clear. The epic places Drona in the center, not because he is monstrous, but because he is recognizable. He is full of knowledge, full of genuine care, and completely unable to see how that care has been arranged, whom it includes, whom it excludes, and what structural harm its exclusions are quietly building toward. The practice the text points toward is not the elimination of love, but the willingness to look steadily at its shape. Whom does my care actually reach? Whom does it step past without seeing? The clay idol in the forest goes on standing.